Hello, welcome to another episode of the Virtual Ninja Show. I'm Heike and I will be your host. And today I have two experts with me and we are going to talk about a new feature that is currently in public preview. And we have Navi with me. Navi, please introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, my name is Navi Beesetti and I am a product manager working under the Entra Private Access product group.
Thank you very much. And then we also have Ashish. Ashish, please also introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, my name is Ashish Jain. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm a group product manager with the Entra Private Access team and really looking forward to sharing our product details with you today.
So this might be confusing for people. We are in the Microsoft Defender XDR Virtual Ninja training, and I have people with me from something that is usually not part really. I mean, yes, it is, but we don't cover Microsoft Entra ID topics. So what's the challenge that we have today, and why are you coming into the show, Ashish?
That's a great question. If you look at traditionally how enterprises have enabled their employees to access private applications in the corporate network, essentially they typically use a perimeter-based approach, which means that when the employees are on premises, they have direct access to these applications because they're part of the corporate network. They're essentially vesting a level of trust on the corporate network. Right? And in the zero trust world, obviously, you cannot really rely on the network. You cannot really trust the network. The other challenge that we see customers with the perimeter-based approach is when these employees are remote, they tend to rely on VPN. VPN as a technology for remote access has worked for several decades. It has worked great. Until lately, you've realized that with VPN, since VPN opens the full access to the network, you really don't want employees to have over-provisioned access, which means that when they have full network access, they can access any application, they can access network, they can go and laterally move inside the network, which opens all sorts of threats, which is where a zero trust network access approach enables a zero trust access solution for customers, and which is what we've tried to build with Entra Private Access.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so this is now a different VPN solution?
I would say this is a full SSE, which is Secure Service Edge solution, which replaces your VPN solution and enables both scenarios which are where the employees are accessing these private applications while they are on premises or while they are remote. And as they access these private applications, and these could really be any private application, we are able to bring in modern identity-based zero trust network access controls before these private applications. So imagine the good old SMB file share or your RDP applications, which traditionally have used legacy authentication mechanisms, protocols like NTLM, protocols like Kerberos, which are no longer considered secure because they are open to things like brute force attacks and so on. We are able to bring in modern conditional access based multifactor authentication controls as users access these private applications.
So, and then where's the connection back to Microsoft Defender XDR or Microsoft Defender for Identity?
Maybe I can bring up a quick slide to show you how that would work. What you see on the screen is essentially a user which is on premises trying to access an SMB file share or an SMB server. And as you would expect, there is a domain controller which is running an on-premises Active Directory. And with Entra Private Access, our service is a managed cloud service. And we deploy an agent on premises, which is called the connector. So the user starts by accessing this application, this SMB resource on premises, right? So user connects to the resource, the SMB server, as you would expect, will try to authenticate the user and say, hey, I need a Kerberos ticket from you before I give you access to the SMB file share. And as a result of which, the user will try to go to the domain controller, which is essentially the key distribution center. Before it can go there, it has to first discover it, right? So Entra Private Access recently added support for DNS, which means that the user is now able to run SRV queries to discover the key distribution center and make a Kerberos authentication request. Now, the traffic to the domain controller is not directly allowed from the user's device to go, which is where we protect the kingdom as such. And the user's traffic to the domain controller is actually intercepted by our agent installed on the user's device and is then taken to our service in the cloud. And before it's delivered to the connector or the domain controller on premises, the user is taken through a set of security checks. The user security posture is validated, the user's identity is validated, the user is posed with a multi-factor authentication challenge, the user's device posture is validated, and when everything else checks out fine, then the traffic is delivered to the connector, which is the Entra Private Access agent on premises, which then delivers the Kerberos ticket request to the domain controller. And the Kerberos domain controller has another agent running, which ensures that there is a mutual trust between the connector and the domain controller, which is then used by the domain controller to issue the Kerberos ticket. And once the Kerberos ticket is issued, it comes back to the user's device and then given back to the SMB file share. So this is how you've actually protected your identity before you could access a SMB file share from an AAD joint device and brought in multi-factor authentication for a legacy authentication protocol.
Thank you so much for explaining the whole steps here. Super interesting. So it basically fills one of the gaps that we had, which is on-prem MFA. So I would assume that most of our customers, they have Microsoft Entra ID or use Microsoft Entra various features. And then given they have that already, they can now use on-prem MFA with Microsoft Entra Private Access.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So this is exactly spot on addressing that gap that you just described.
Wonderful. This is amazing. Okay. So let me ask a couple of questions. So because I'm totally new to Microsoft Entra and everybody out there will say, oh, really? So what do customers need to have? Is this now is this an extra product? Is this working for customers with what kind of plan licensing wise do they need to have?
We have built a new offering, a new product, which is called Microsoft Entra SSE. Now that's a security service edge solution. It has two pillars. It has Entra Internet Access and Entra Private Access. Like I said, it's a full SSE product. Entra Private Access is a full zero trust network access solution, enabling users to be able to get multi-factor authentication while they're accessing resources both from on-premises and while they're remote.
Wow.
So essentially enabling access for any user, any device, from anywhere to any application hosted anywhere.
Okay. So you mentioned something about an agent that needs to be installed, and then there's also that connector on your nice architecture diagram. So can you elaborate a little bit on these two components, how to install them, where to install them, and just a little bit about the configuration, the setup?
Sure. The first agent that's needed is on the endpoint. This is the agent that is responsible for intercepting the traffic, going to the domain controller or to the resource, and then routing it through the service, bringing in the desired security posture. This agent right now is a standalone agent. You can push or install this agent on all your enterprise devices using either Intune or essentially any enterprise config management. It could be SCCM, it could be even GPOs, whatever you prefer. So over time, our goal is to make this agent part of the Windows operating system itself, which is when we are not expecting customers to deploy yet another agent from Microsoft.
Yeah, and how we know this, because, some of the operating systems, they have been already shipped. So bringing something into an operating system that has been already shipped is a challenge. So probably, maybe Windows 11, Windows next version. And then for everyone out there, we will see if it's even possible to even bring it down further. But it's I know this from Defender for endpoint times. It's really challenging to ship something or like to embed something in something that has been shipped, because we have many customers, they don't want any change on the operating system after they got it. And so stay tuned in which versions it will be embedded. And then for the others, you can install, of course, going like the agent. And then what's the connector? Where do you install that connector?
So you can think of connector as a private network access gateway of sorts. The good thing about this connector agent is that it relies only on outbound connections to our service using port 443. So you're not really looking at tweaking your firewall configurations or firewall policies or opening anything from internet inbound into a corporate network, right? So with connector, you're essentially deploying a Windows Server box or a VM and downloading an installer from our portal, just going through a simple setup, next process to install this agent on this Windows Server box, which will create this outbound connection and get the connectivity going to our service.
Are there some best practices? Should this be a public-facing server already, like a web server or a SharePoint server, or can we reuse an existing server role in a customer network, or are we recommending to spin up a dedicated VM just for that role?
It's really up to the customer how they would prefer to deploy it. It's pretty flexible in that way. Some customers even deploy it on the workload itself. We recommend that do not use the same server as the connector for which you're using the server as a domain controller, so you don't really combine it on the same. You really don't want direct traffic from internet going to the domain controller, obviously.
Yes,
so,
I think that's good practice.
Definitely. So that's one. The other one is we typically suggest that customers deploy these connectors in at least in a pair of two for high resiliency, for high availability, and essentially for load balancing as well.
Okay. Thank you. So last question on the slide, because I see now we move from on-prem to the cloud. There is that private access cloud. Is there something complicated to configure on that side? Is it like giving, I don't know, tickets, URLs? What's happening on the cloud side?
That's a great question. So we have our Entra ID access management portal for Entra Private Access. Essentially, we have something that is called as app segments, wherein customers typically configure FQDNs, IP addresses, ports, and protocols of destinations that they want to protect and enable secure access to. The same experience, we have now enabled customers to enter SPNs. And these are the SPNs or service principal names of private applications on premises. So these could be SPNs corresponding to your SMB file shares, to your remote desktop applications that you're trying to RDP to, essentially anything that requires your authentication with your domain controller. You can create an SPN and onboard into that configuration as an app segment. And then we are able to secure access, bringing in Entra conditional access into the path before the users are able to access those private applications.
Okay. So before we move off that slide, last question, Ashish, is there anything else that people need to know, need to consider when it comes to that configuring and architecture of that solution?
There's one more thing which is worth highlighting, that we have an agent on the domain controller as well, which is ensuring server-side enforcement too, which means if your users are trying to access your private applications or trying to access the domain controller or the key distribution center from an unmanaged device or an unenrolled device, we are still able to intercept that authentication and enable or block access coming from those devices.
Wow. So it's all thought through. Can we show this in action, how that looks like?
Of course, we have Navi from our team here, who's an expert in the demo. So I'll just give it to her.
Nice. Navi. So before we actually totally go into the demo and you go wild, what is the demo about? Like, explain a little bit the setup of what are the machines, what are the different windows, and what are we showing, so that, because sometimes I'm just looking at the demo and I have no clue what's happening. So help me set the stage for the demo, please.
Sure, of course. So this will be a demo for on-prem resource multifactor authentication using Entra Private Access, and this is for a user that is trying to access a on-premise SMB resource in particular.
Okay, so basically it's a little bit what we just looked at in the architecture picture. Beautiful.
Right,
Let's go.
exactly. So here in this case, we will be able to see that the user device is Azure AD joined, but it is not domain joined. So the user here does not have any network level access. And we can also see that there are no cached tickets for Kerberos credentials. So now in File Explorer, if the user tries to access the SMB file resource by service principal name, there is an immediate prompt for authentication using conditional access multi-factor authentication. And once the user actually correctly authenticates, here we can see they are going through the process of authenticating. We will be able to see that once they press verify, they are actually able to access the SMB destination.
That looks so easy. Nice. You're highlighting something. Is that something we need to just verifying and just showing that we have now access to those resources?
Right, exactly. That it's the same user that's accessing the resources.
Nice. Okay, I remember, Navi, you didn't just come with one demo, so you have another one. What's the other one about?
Right, exactly. So this next demo that we will be sharing is for a on-premise RDP resource. And here in this case, we can see the user is trying to access the RDP resource. We saw that there was no VPN connected here within the internal corporate network, so the user does not have any network level access. And you can see that when the user tried to ping the RDP resource by IP, they were not able to do so. So they will try to bring up the remote desktop client and try to connect to the same IP destination. And as you saw, the moment the user tries to connect to the remote desktop, they are prompted for authentication using conditional access, MFA. And once they authenticate and complete authentication, you can see that the RDP session came right up. And you will see in command prompt within the RDP session, after completing authentication, the IP address of the remote desktop is the same as the IP destination that we were previously trying to ping before we authenticated using conditional access MFA.
This is amazing. I mean, these are common scenarios, right? Someone is not on-prem, someone needs to use work resources, and they are being asked to use a RDP client. And then it's just like no clicking around from the user and trying to figure out how to access it. It's so seamless. Yes, of course, they need to authenticate, but yes, I mean, that's what it is there for. This is wonderful. Thank you so much. So Navi, I would assume that, because it was not existent until now, that customers might have chosen a different third-party solution. So how is this now maybe different to other existing solutions out there?
Right. Thank you, Heike. So our Microsoft Entra Private Access solution is competitive with other solutions out there because we provide users access to all applications, and we also have a single policy plane and management experience, as we allow users access to their private apps from any location, so whether they're on premises or remote. And we also do have more network filtering capabilities. And in addition to this, we will have a better user experience, as eventually our agent will become inboxed on both the client device as well as on the domain controller. So soon customers will not need to deploy any additional agent.
That's always beautiful. I remember I had a conversation with a CISO, and we talked about Defender for Endpoint, I think. And he was like, oh, yes, finally, not another agent on the box. He can't even count all the different things that he had to install. So this is always, always welcome. From your experience and from what you know from other solutions, is it difficult to configure? Is it straightforward? Is it easy? I mean, not about the agents, right? Given that they will be embedded, hopefully soon. But what's your experience from working with your customers setting it up?
Right. So, from my personal experience, as I said, we have a great user experience because we do have a single policy management plane. So, you don't have to click in and out of separate browsers. You have everything on the same page within the Entra portal.
So, and because this is still a Defender XDR Ninja training, given that this is helping with a gap that the Defender for Identity product has, or I wouldn't say it has a gap, but like that solution was not there. Is there something customers need to do, or that's totally transparent and just working on its own?
So we have internally worked within Microsoft with the Defender team to have the integrations in place, so that when customers are using all our products, they get better security posture. We are sharing telemetry between the products so that the security admin or the SecOps experience for customers is what they would really expect in place across these products.
Wow. Bringing that baby out the door, it's been a ride, and I know how excited product teams are when they finally ship such an amazing feature. Anything you would like to share that can be shared?
One thing I would like to mention is that the product is available in public preview. So our customers, if they want to try their hands on it, we would really encourage and welcome you to try the product. It's very easy to get it going in your tenant, just a couple of checkboxes and you're good to go. Obviously, there are one or two agents that you need to deploy for now, but those installation will fade away eventually. So please try this product out. Share your feedback with us. If you still see any gaps, we would really love to know and work with you to make sure that they're addressed before the release. So yeah, we're looking forward to your feedback.
So Ashish, talking about feedback, I want to ask my audience actually out there for feedback because we plan the new season and we would love to know from you what kind of topics we should cover. So please drop a comment or send me an email, find me on Twitter, wherever you want. Just bring your ideas my way and I will try to make them happy. So Navi and Ashish, thank you so much for being part of that show. And I hope I will see you at some point back as my guests on the show. And for everyone out there, I hope you enjoy it. And don't forget to start testing this new MFA on-prem solution. Talk soon.